Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Linda Fontaine. My guest today is Kirk Abner, the author and speaker of Flower Dog Man. Again, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, we left talking a little bit about ego and things like that. Explain that a little bit more to us.
I'd be happy to. Again, what I've discovered in my journey, and this sort of my definition of ego is not your 8th grade psychology class definition that we learned. In my mind, if we don't really understand who we are as human beings, in other words, if we don't see ourselves as unconditional love, then we have a default MO. And that one is, it's basically driven by ego. Now, ego is problematic because ego, among other things, is never ever satisfied. Plus, ego can erupt in a single moment. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of ego. But I regard ego as being, basically it's a scale, it's a power scale. And on one end is all power, all control ego. And on the other end is no power, no control ego. And right in the middle there's a median where there is no ego. And that's where I think we really want to try to get to, just living a life without ego. But for example, for lack of a better word, the single greatest act that a person can perform in power, control, ego is to take another human being's life.
Yes.
For lack of a better word, I think the single greatest act that a person performs in no power, no control ego is to take their own life. But there's many different levels and types of ego that are short of murder or suicide. For example, you can torture another person or another creature, and that comes out of power, control, ego. Or you can torture yourself, and that comes out of no power, no control, ego.
It's like passive and aggression. You know, it's like the ego's like the aggressor and no ego's like the passive almost to me.
Well, it is. For example, you know, you can attempt to control people and situations and outcomes, and that comes out of power, control, ego. I think male chauvinism is a great example of power, control, ego. Or you can allow yourself to be controlled by people and circumstance and outcomes. In other words, you might see yourself as a victim. Or the martyr syndrome. That's an example to me of somebody that doesn't have power, you know, that's just living through no power, no control ego.
Weak almost.
So it's, again, there's sort of two sides to that. I think one of the most pronounced one, though, is something as simple as you can judge another human being. You can simply pass judgment on another person, and that comes out of power, control, ego. Or you can allow yourself to be judged by others or judge yourself, and that comes out of no power, no control, ego. Again, ego is the way I've experienced it, and I've also witnessed it. I mean, there's not a day that passes, Linda, I don't see something in the news that I'm just reminded of you know, this message or the ego principle. I was thinking about the young lady that, you know, they just had the anniversary of that, the tragedy in Florida, the Parkland shooting.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard an interview with one of the students, and she said, you know, Valentine's Day has been taken away from me forever. I'll never enjoy Valentine's. Well, in my mind, again, that's coming out of no power, no control, ego. Bless her heart. She, you know, that's a judgment she is placing on herself. You know, it's not anybody else that's telling her she can't do that. Yeah, and she just, again, I can relate to that because I was the exact same way. I just kept, again, by the time I was 41, my self-image looked like, you know, it was sort of a cumulative thing. It was years and years of disappointment, frustration, loss, breakups, resentment, and that's one of, you know, you don't have to do that. And I think once you start developing an awareness of self and understand that you can control your self-image profile, then that's one of the first things that you dispel, is all those kind of beliefs about yourself. It's arrogant or, you know, as weakness alike. It's, that's not who we really are as human beings.
Well, tell me a little bit more about what's in the book. What are some of the steps that you have in the book that people can take?
Well, again, this seems kind of like a very abstract concept, and it is. I can understand that, and you know, I don't. It may be a message that everybody's not ready for. But there are some very practical steps that we can start, and I believe that, on your journey towards happiness. And again, we've talked about one of them is having an awareness of self, being able to see yourself in context. Think about the performers or the athletes you see today. I mean, they're able to see, like, they can see how they catch the ball, they can see how they dance. They're very mindful of how they're acting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that's very important for every one of us to employ in our own lives. Being able just to see and feel the impact that you have in the lives of other people is a great way to start. Another basic step, I believe, is realization. The reality is this. Again, if you want to pursue happiness, the only thing you can truly control in this world is yourself.
True.
And so that means you can control A, what you do with intention, and you can control B, how you respond to the events that happen in your lives. So important, mm-hmm. and as you move along towards happiness. Another step is what I refer to as cessation, as in noise cessation. When I watch a lot of programs on television, when I listen to a lot of talk shows on the radio, or get on the internet and read the different blogs and posts, and all that conversation, I just hear a lot of noise. Because basically there's a lot of criticism, mm-hmm. a lot of sarcasm, a lot of labeling and discounting, basically a whole lot of judgment.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So again, on my path towards happiness, I elect just to not participate in the noise. It's easy. I think everybody thinks they're a political pundit now, that they can express their viewpoints on whoever's in the office of presidency. I reserve that for other people. I don't want to go down that path. Another big step is what I refer to as transportation.
Okay.
This life journey, this life experience is like a train ride, except this train ride doesn't go 60 miles an hour, it goes 60 seconds a minute. Mm. And the beautiful thing about this train ride we're on is you don't have to take any luggage with you. You don't have to carry baggage. Baggage in the form of grief, of disappointment, of resentment, of mistakes, of hatred. You can just leave all that behind. And I really try to practice that every moment of every day. But again, now, because ego can erupt, sometimes, some of those feelings, arise, but I try to recognize that and then just move on. But
well, how can people move on? Okay, so it sounds like a good premise to say you just choose not to get caught up in this, or choose not to believe what someone's saying about you if it's negative. So how could someone start when they're so wound up in the idea that they're not worthy, or that people are judging them, or they're just unhappy? What is the first step that someone can take to say, stop, don't listen to that noise? When you're so downtrodden, mm-hmm. What is the baby steps, that somebody can say, I can't be around this toxicity, I can't listen to this?
Well, again, it's, it's not normal. Because it is so pervasive, this attitude about control and such. It's important to kind of be able to step outside of that and just spend some time with yourself and just, again, start thinking about who you truly are. Again, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I do think that this is an example of just sort of breaking the ice on the conversation for people.
Okay.
Again, there's a lot of us that aren't even aware that we can control some of these things in life. But for me, there was a more practical moment. My friend in Knoxville invited me to a live training session. It's called Live Training. That's sponsored by the Kairos Foundation in Knoxville. They have offices or facilities all over the world.
Life training.
But it was a very intense, about a 30-hour session over the course of a weekend. And just a lot of sort of group work and then a lot of individual work. But Linda, I felt like what I did was take a coal shovel and actually scooped out my soul.
Wow.
It was such an awakening. I'll never forget that Sunday morning I woke up. Really, it felt like a brand new day.
That's
it was
great.
just truly brand new. I get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, there was
great.
no association or attachment with anything. It was just, I was brand new. And so if, you know, for a more formal session, I would encourage you to and I give the address in the book, but it's lifetraining.org in Knoxville.
I've never heard of it.
They do great work there.
Is it just in Knoxville, or they have this all over the country?
Well, I know they're down in Huntsville, they're out in California, they're in Cape Town, South Africa. They have services all over. But,
That's great.
But that was really kind of the turning point.
Well, what I want to mention is how people can get a hold of this book. That seems to be a great way to break the ice if you need some happiness in your life, or to find your journey. Amazon.
It
Get
is
this
on Amazon. It's published by Durant's Publishing out of Pittsburgh.
All right.
But I'm also, I'm in the midst of a speaker tour. I'm actually speaking at 22 different libraries in our 4-state region.
Okay.
I started last week, and then this will be going through, I think, about May the 8th.
All right.
But last week, for example, I was up in Beckley, West Virginia. I spoke in Bristol. And coming up, I'm in Kingsport and Lebanon. And
I know this is going to air after you've been in Kingsport, because this airs in just a few days. So can people get on your website to find out where these opportunities are?
Yes, thank you.
And what is that?
It's, well, if you're on Facebook, you can go to the awareness series, and or you can email me at speakerkirkabner@gmail.com.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to provide any details.
And I bet if people Google Flower Dog Man, they can get more information, or Kirk Abner.
Correct.
Kirkabner. Kirk Abner, thank you so much for being here. I feel like we've just started talking about this. I could talk to you all day about it, but I hope your speaking engagements go well. I encourage people to get this book.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for being on the show.
Appreciate the hospitality.
You're welcome. And we'll see you next week with another edition of A Closer Look.